Hi, welcome to Job Opportunity. Today we have Marcus Dober, who is a Deputy Chief of Staff, Office of the CFO at Microsoft. Today we are asking him a few questions on his job. To start it off, can you briefly explain your profession, like in general, what it is?
So a chief of staff typically works for an executive of a company. You can think of a chief of staff as the person who kind of keeps everything running. An executive typically is really busy. They're going from meeting to meeting. They don't have time to stop sometimes and think about how they're spending their time, what they're spending their time on, the messages that they're communicating to their team. So you can think typically an executive might have hundreds of people working for them or even thousands. And so how are you communicating the strategic vision of your organization or your company to your employees? Where are you spending your time for external events? What kinds of interviews are you doing? What is the message you're sending with who you're spending your time with? And so it's really it's a very broad role that kind of encompasses basically anything that pops up. So there's no typical day. And so really you're putting out a lot of fires, you're juggling a lot of different tasks and priorities, but it's kind of a role where you're doing a lot of delegating as well, just making sure that things are getting done.
Okay. What are your responsibilities as specifically at Microsoft?
Okay, so I work for the Chief Financial Officer at Microsoft. So basically, my role is a little bit different in that it's more focused on our finance organization, which is about roughly 3,500 people worldwide. And so my job covers everything from handling communications, so any type of speech that our CFO is giving, any communications that she's sending out to the company or to our organization. Typically that will come through our office. We'll put that together. We'll also handle all of the content for any speeches that she's giving. And then we'll field a lot of requests for her time, whether it be from customers or from other organizations at Microsoft, or even from publications, magazines, newspapers, that sort of thing. That's kind of a few things in a nutshell, but really it's a lot of different things that may pop up at any given time.
Yeah, so you're just basically the person who just like solves every issue, just like can be flexible.
Basically,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right.
So yeah, that's kind of a good description.
Why did you initially pursue this career over others?
So it's interesting because I didn't necessarily pursue this career. I kind of fell into this job. So my background is in finance, and so I've held more of the traditional finance type roles. And from there, I was kind of recruited to take on this role. And so it's not something that I knew much about before taking on the role, but the more I learned about it, the more it sounded really interesting. And so I think I had somewhat of the skill set required to do it, and then other things that I've kind of learned on the fly.
Would you say this, like what you're doing now, is better, or what you did in finance, like before you did this, would be more appealing to you?
This is, I think, easily the most fun job I've ever had. And so definitely I would choose this. There's a number of different reasons. It's just getting to do a lot of things that I've never gotten a chance to do before. I've never done communications for like 3,500 people before, or even working on stuff that will go to our Microsoft whole entire employee base, which is over 100,000 people worldwide. And then also just getting to be in the room when our CFO is meeting with CEOs and executives of other major companies, seeing the kinds of discussions that are taking place, how decisions are made at that level. And so it's really getting to be a fly on the wall for a lot of really interesting things.
Wow, that's really cool. What was the academic pathway you took to get here?
Okay, so I got my undergraduate degree in accounting. and then I worked for a number of years, and then I went back to school to get my MBA, and I focused on finance as well as marketing with that. So that's kind of the path I took, but I will say there's no one path to get to where I am right now.
What does an ordinary day look like for you?
So I would say there's not an ordinary day. A lot of that will depend on what our CFO has going on. So, for instance, if she's meeting with a lot of customers that day, that will take up the majority of our day. So typically, myself or my boss, the chief of staff, will accompany her to meetings. So if she's meeting with a customer, one of us will go with her. If she's traveling, one of us will go with her. And so a lot of it can kind of depend on what she's going on. So we're either attending meetings with her or we're prepping for events that are happening in the future, whether it's a speech that she's giving or a leadership summit that she's hosting or something like that. So there's a lot of prep work there's a lot of partnering with other teams, keeping up with the various projects that she has going on. And so I think that's definitely one of the more fun things about it is there isn't a typical day.
How do you balance your work life with your personal life?
I would say this job is actually a lot easier than other jobs I've had. The reason being is that we're serving one person, which is basically the CFO. And she happens to be really good about understanding that you have a life, whether you are a parent, which I am, or you're single. Everyone has things their hobbies, things they want to do outside. Like no one or most people don't want to have work be the end all and be all. And so I think I have a pretty flexible environment where, if I need to leave and go home and play with my daughter, I can do that. If I need to log on later on in the evening and do some work, that's fine. It doesn't matter where I am. I don't need to be in the office all the time. I can work from home or work from wherever. And so it's something that's always been really important to me to be able to spend time with my family. And so this role, it can be very demanding, but there's also some good down periods. And so for the most part, when you'll be really busy. And so there are times where I don't get to spend as much time with my family as I'd like, but then you make up for it in other times.
What is one thing that you would tell others that are aspiring to be in the same field as you?
I would say regardless of field, most people, there's a lot of pressure. I remember both coming out of high school and college and even grad school, you have to know what you're going to do. You have to know what you want to be when you grow up. And I feel like most people still don't know that, right? Like a lot of people start out in one position and then they switch to a completely different profession, and that's perfectly fine. I think you learn more depending on the types of roles that you do, the types of experiences that you have. It's kind of like you don't know what you don't know. So maybe there's a profession out there that you don't know anything about, but once you learn about it is super interesting. Similar to what I said about being deputy chief of staff, I didn't know anything about it, and now this is the most fun job I've ever had. And so I think just explore, as much as you can, no matter how old you get, no matter what your degree is in. Like there's a lot of pressure, like, oh, I got my degree in engineering, so I hate engineering, but I have to be an engineer for the rest of my life. It's not like that, just follow what feels right to you, whether that zigzags or whether it's a straight line. And just have the courage to do that, I would say.
Thanks, Mr. Dover, for sharing with us what a career in finance and business management could look like and inspiring high school students who are interested in business and math. Any last words for those high school kids who just don't know what to do?
Just have fun, explore, like I said, enjoy the time, because sooner or later you'll have to be an adult and have lots of responsibilities and things like that. So just enjoy your time. Obviously study hard, but explore, take advantage of all that's out there.